Hello everyone, this is Jeremy with Coding Contraptions, and today I'm going to be talking again about my vector addition page I've been working on. I've made a lot of changes and it's come a long way and it's looking good. So just going to go through some of the changes. I'm going to be using GitHub today. I've learned how to commit files to GitHub. It is an amazing way to keep track of what you're working on, and also if you work with multiple people. I haven't done this yet, but it looks like a great format for sharing a program with each other and what changes are being made and by who. And so I'll go ahead and get started here. Here's the program itself. So this here is the menu, and here's the graphical display of the code for that menu. So for a while I went ahead and had this displayed as a floating to the left, which just basically it makes it line up like this, makes this line at the top. That's the traditional way to do it. I did change the display to block because I did not want it to be part of the flex box, which encapsulates these three sections here. There's a section here, and a section here. So when I took it out of the flex box, one of the things that the flex box did is it placed itself over here to the right. So all of this information was trying to cram itself over here. So I went ahead and changed this container actually is the code that is the encapsulation of these three things, and setting the display to flex is the flex box. And so what I did was I changed the margin at the top for all. It will affect all three of these sections to 5%, and that's what pushed it down and over to the left and made it work right. That actually took a while to understand how that works, but now I do, and it looks great. So here I removed. You can actually put flex into these individual divisions of code, and so because each one of these with all these elements is in a separate division, and they're all encapsulated again by one single flex box called container. All that is in the code beneath. I'm going to keep moving on though at this point. So you can put a number, and so if you put this, say you set this number here flex to 1, this number here set the flex to 3, and this number over here set the flex number to 1 again. This center section will be 3 times bigger than the side sections, and that's I did play around with that a little bit. It didn't accomplish what I wanted it to accomplish, and I just left it back to the default, and it seemed to actually put things where I wanted them. So it does have some built-in automatic I guess margins and padding that it does that looks pretty good. I did have to tweak it a little, especially over in this side, but overall it did a great job. So the automatic flexbox settings are actually pretty good unless you're trying to do something specific. It really seems like it puts things where they need to be and in the right proportions by itself. So anyway, I changed the margins here. I just went from 100 pixels down to 2%. I like using percentages better in general. It makes things more responsive when you change the size of your window. This final here covers all three of these sets of text, and I broke those out into individual pieces. Right now, it doesn't really matter. I just changed the final there. Everything was 20 pixels. I broke it down to the final vector is the top part, that text there, that heading, and then final direction, final magnitude, right there and there. And I broke them out because later on I want to be able to change this to have a bigger text than the other two. They were all the same class before. That class was final, but now they're in their own 3 separate classes. Also, if you look closely at the code, there's no dot in front of these. That's something I need to add later on. Honestly, this margin left, it actually is, it is working already, even though I didn't put a dot in front of it. I mean, it seems like sometimes JavaScript is good about that. I do want to put those in there though to actually make it look proper, but it did actually put the margin in there. So anyway, moving on. So these things down here, these 3 different element, I guess that's a class, that's an actual ID, and that's an ID. I went ahead and wanted to have more control of each individual piece. So num vectors applies to this button. So that is the actual CSS code to allow me. I did that so I changed that at the top and created its own separate class so that it could go ahead and be bigger. I wanted to make the font bigger. And so I use ID tags for these, which the pound is an ID and then the dot is a class. There's again information out there about differences between classes and IDs. But I went ahead and changed the font size to 20 pixels to match. So these two are the same size. And then input vector is this button at the top. And that's, I want it to be a little bit bigger up here. It just seemed to make more sense. All this is bigger. It's kind of more front and center, the graphics end of things. So I went ahead and made that 30 pixels. And moving on down here, the show vectors is, well, anyway, that's a different piece. So that's basically what I did at this point. I'm going to go through a little bit more, but that's mostly what changed the graphical layout to what it looks like right now. You can see I removed a lot of code. I moved the container so it would only encapsulate those three things. It was doing something different before. I needed it to be for these three pieces, so they would each have their own column. Again, I changed that, and I made the input vectors a class. I added a space there. Added a title on the button. So before, the buttons didn't really have a title, and now I didn't know what a title even did as far as an element. So what a title does to an element is when you hover, it's basically an on hover change that allows you to put descriptions for what the item does. So I put descriptions for the items for the button so people can hover over it. This one says click to show input vectors on the graph. And this one, it says enter number of vectors to add. So I already have this set to 5. I'll change it to 7. I was like 7's my lucky number. So you click that and it will allow you to put in your individual vectors and their magnitudes. And the thing about this is that I went ahead and had it set up so that it puts the directions 10 degrees here, 20 degrees there, 30 degrees, and so on and so forth. I'll add 10 degrees ad infinitum. You can put as many vectors in as you want. You can change that number to 100. It'll do 100. I've tested it. You could probably never add 100 vectors, but if you wanted to, you could. Anyway, so once you get that set up, and then if you click here, it'll show the number of vectors over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're all going up by 10 degrees, and they're all the same magnitude. So I don't have numbers on this graph at this point. I might put some numbers on the edge here just to add some clarity. But each one of these is 100 as far as the magnitude goes. That's 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. And so this one is 250 is right here. And as you can see, the magnitude is 250. So it goes up there. It's going to be probably a little less than half there. It may not look like it graphically on the screen, but that's what it's set up to do, and the math is there. Anyway, and then it goes around. It actually looks really good. It looks like it's working properly. I'm a little concerned because that looks a little more than half. It might be an optical illusion though. So anyway, that's really what I have done so far as the graphics end of things. Again, I added a lot of code and changed things around. I've made even these three here I put under the child class. And this is another child class, and again, I'm just trying to make sure that everything works properly in here the way that's supposed to. It's just there's so many changes, and I did them so, I don't want to say quickly, but it wasn't really quick, I guess, but it was just a lot, and I learned so much as I was going. So as I'm going through this even, I'm recalling things that I went through and thought processes, but those are the main ones. I think I'll go ahead and wrap this video up there. Again, this is more about the code and what kind of my process. It's not a tutorial, so forgive me if you expected more descriptions on some things. But I really did enjoy this process, and I really had a lot of fun creating this web page, and I can't wait to finish it. I even gave the name on GitHub. Final calculations done, make it pretty, because that's the next step. I mean, I have to have the display, some button over here to display the final result, or have it display when you click here. I haven't decided yet what I want to do there. And then I'm going to again make these look like this stuff up here, and I just want to make it look nice at the end. But it's mostly done. I'm just going to wrap it up in the next video, and then think about what the next project I want to tackle is going to be. So anyway, thanks everybody. Hope you had a great day. If you listened to the end, I really appreciate it. I know that this is not a super exciting topic for most people, but for those of you that do coding or are looking at this because I put it on my resume, it gives you an idea of what I've been working on lately. So take care, and I hope you're doing well.